I think the best way to show you what I mean is to tell you about a loving Good Samaritan I know. When he was a boy, his parents took him to see the movies. Bill was African American, and so they weren't allowed to sit where the white people sat. So they had to sit in the segregated section of the theater. But they saw a movie about a motorcycle gang. And Bill said, ever since I saw that movie when I was a kid, I wanted to be a guy who rode a motorcycle and was in a motorcycle gang. Bill did everything he could to become a Hell's Angel. He got the same tattoos that Hell's Angels have. He had the president of the Eastern chapter of Hell's Angels in his living room holding his baby son on his knee, asked to become a member, and they denied him because the Hell's Angels had no black members. Bill wanted to be the first African American in the Hell's Angels. They wouldn't accept him. So he went to the Renegades. Bill became a leader in the Renegade motorcycle gang. He lived a life of hardness and drugs and alcohol and narrow miss after narrow miss with the police. But around 1982, Bill, the leader of the Renegades, who was called by a name that I cannot repeat in this service because it was so inappropriate, was sitting in his kitchen at his dining room table, and his wife and his boys had gone to bed. And it was actually pretty crazy because this church, every once in a while around holidays like Easter and Christmas, they would pay to have their church service put on the local TV station. And they had done that. And it had been shown that morning, but because of a glitch at the TV program, something with their programming and their tapes got mixed up, and they actually showed the service twice on accident. Once in the morning and then once at midnight that night, which wasn't supposed to happen. But while Bill was sitting there at his dining room table, this preacher comes on TV who's not supposed to be on TV. And he'd heard about this guy, and he had been invited to the church, and he refused to go, but with nobody else around, he listened for just a few moments. And he said, "Suddenly I was crying." 2 days later on a Sunday morning, he came to the church and could not wait for the service to be over so that at the end he could come to the front to the altar and accept the love of God into his life. Bill passed away this past week from complications after a stroke. People have been sharing photos, and I was just moved, looking at photos of him with his son. And the next one is he and his wife at a Christmas party. And you look at that and you go, that guy's not the leader of the Renegades. The love of Jesus made all the difference in his life. In 1982, Bill's life changed, and the love of God poured in. I never saw Bill stand up in front of a crowd of people. But I worked alongside of him in a ministry that we had at our church. We would take buses and we would go to some of the worst parts of town, and we would pick up children and bring them to church, bring their families to church. And Bill and his wife Barbara did this for years. And I was a part of this ministry, and every summer Bill would do something where for each bus, and our church, a larger church, had 10 to 12 bus routes at a time. Each summer, each Sunday in the summer, he would have a cookout for each bus full of kids. And what I remember about Bill is Bill cooking up hamburgers and hot dogs for these kids, and then sitting down and eating with them, talking with kids who were on the same path that he was on, and talking to them about how God changed his life, how Jesus came into his life and changed everything. How does someone go from renegade to Good Samaritan? The love of Jesus.